Hi guys, it's another beautiful Friday, and we're hoping to do another talk. As usual, I am Orezi, broadcasterist, and we're talking today about systems of advantage. Systems of advantage. Now, I've done a couple of talks in the course of this period. First of all, we looked at reinventing yourself, then we looked at scaling up, then we looked at how to jumpstart your genius. Then we also now talked about rethinking the impossible, the practical approach to problem solving. So today I want to talk about systems of advantage. Systems of advantage. Before I get into it, to see some of those other talks, you can go to my Facebook page. The name is Orezi Emiotu, both on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Just look for me, follow me, and then every time I put out content, you can see it. So today is going to be a quick one, but it's going to be a deep one. So we're going to be talking about systems of advantage. Systems of advantage. Systems of advantage. I've come to understand. Let me start with a story. Now, there's a story of a very busy father who was involved, trying to get some work done, and his 2-year-old son, I'll take about 3-year-old son, will not let him be. So he decided, okay, you know what, let me engage this young man, give him some work to do so that he can get off my back. So he got a map of the world, assumingly, which was basically torn in several pieces, mixed up the pieces and gave it to him and said, you know what, put it together. The young boy, I think he was older than three, but a young boy, and he was supposed to put it together. And the father was shocked. In a few minutes, the boy had returned with the map of the world perfectly fitted together. And he was in utter confusion. How did this young lad, who basically had no idea where some countries were in the world, how was he able to put the map together? What he did not realize that on the flip side, so on the back side of the map, was a drawing of a man. So what the boy did, while the father thought that he was giving the boy a map of the world, he actually gave, the boy was putting together a map of the parts of a man's body. Now, and that's what I want to talk about today, and that's patterns. You see, the young boy was quickly able to identify a pattern. And because he could identify a pattern, he automatically was able to embark on a system of advantage. Many a times in life, the things that we go through are as complicated as the numerous countries in the world, and everybody, you're trying to name to learn the country, find out the capital, things like that. But you see, on the flip side, there is a pattern. I heard someone say that chaos is the highest form of order. You might not understand that statement, that chaos is the highest form of order. What does that mean? That in a series of seemingly random events, there is a pattern. The people that are able to identify the pattern in those events are able to come out on top, because you see, speed is a currency in the time we're living in. We are in a time where someone says you have to learn, you have to relearn, and you have to unlearn everything. You have to learn fast and you have to deploy quicker. Because you are racing against time, you are racing against your competition, you are racing against yourself. You don't have your entire life to be able to get things right. You have to get things, they say be first or be better. So today, systems of advantage. I want to also say this at this point. You see, God in His infinite mercy, when He created the world, there are patterns all through nature. When you watch, for example, that's why He said there's a time to plant and there's a time to reap. There's a time when I know for a fact that the sun is going to rise at a certain time, the sun is going to set at a certain time. I know for a fact that there's a period when in some parts of the world it is winter, it is summer, it is spring, it is autumn. In some part it is raining season, it is dry season. But these are patterns, and if you study long enough, you are able to predict when another season is coming on the horizon. What does that tell you? It tells you that you can take advantage of the opportunity that the new season will bring. It tells you that you can predict human behavior. I read while I was growing up, and it sounded like cliche then. He said that success is predictable and nature is neutral. Success is predictable and nature is neutral. So today I'm going to be talking about several blocks of patterns that you need to identify in your journey in life. If you're going to see personal productivity, if you're going to see personal success, if you're going to see organizational productivity, if you're going to see organizational success, you have to be able to identify the patterns in your road. You need to be able to identify the patterns in your journey. As soon as you are able to do this, you automatically start operating with a system of advantage that sets you apart from the pack. The people that have identified these patterns are able to make tremendous progress. They make difficult things seem easy. So while you are still trying to second guess, trying to understand what is going on, because even in learning, there is a pattern to learning. If you don't understand it, you will struggle thinking that everybody is doing it the same way. Now, before I delve into the blocks of patterns, let's talk about the blocks of knowledge. Now, when it comes to learning, and that's the mistake a lot of times that we make. When it comes to learning, you cannot, for example, teach a person algebraic equations or quadratic equations without them first of all understanding the rudiments of mathematics. Now, why am I saying this? Because half the times in life, whether it's with our finances, whether it's with our relationships, whether it's with our marriage, whether it's with our job, we are trying to apply a quadratic equation formula when we do not even understand the rudiments of mathematics. We do not understand the rudiments of arithmetic. We do not understand how numbers come together. So that is at every point in time when you engage in a venture. The Bible says something. The Bible says that who is that man that wants to engage on a thing and does not first of all count the cost? What is counting the cost? You need to be able to identify what is the foundation required for this thing. What are the columns on which this thing will stand, and how do I cover it up and prevent it from utter harm? So let's now talk about patterns. Let's talk about patterns that give you systems of advantage. The first pattern I want to talk about very, very quickly is what I call the people pattern. Now, a lot of times people have said that mentorship is everything. Mentorship is everything. Now, one of the quickest ways to get to where you want to get to is to identify somebody that is already there and simply pattern your life around that person. Identify somebody who is already where you want to be and pattern your life around that person. You need to identify, okay, what does this person do? What makes this person think? What are the seasons of learnings that this person has gone through? What are the experiential knowledges that this person has acquired? Now, while no two fingers are equal, you need to also understand that they are principles that are universal. And when you are able to engage them and put them into practice, you automatically begin to see a system of advantage. They are things, I can assure you, you will never learn trying to learn it yourself. It is easier for you to see somebody do it and then automatically you can do it. You see, there's something about seeing somebody that has done a particular thing. It inspires you, it challenges you, it pushes you to want to do the same thing. So you need to be able to identify the people pattern. The flip side of this, apart from the aspect of mentorship, is you need to also identify the people pattern in terms of behavior. I was talking recently somewhere and I said that, while we talk about the world being in recession, I mean, this is not to trivialize the impact of what the world is going through, but this is to make you understand that a lot of times what simply happens when we now experience either a financial squeeze or we see things happen is because there is a change in behavior and approach by organizations and by individuals. What do I mean? Let me explain it. What do I mean? So people perceive that there's going to be there's coming recession, so people begin to hold back. So people that will normally give out money, institutions that will normally lend out money to make the economy liquid, will automatically begin to hold back those same monies and refuse to release them. So as long as people are holding back on what they are supposed to be releasing, there's going to be a general squeeze. So understanding the people pattern, what happens? So take a business, for example. When it's raining season, umbrellas sell. When it's dry season, you cannot sell umbrellas. You cannot sell sweaters in raining season. I mean, you cannot sell sweaters in dry season. Why? Because it is hot. You notice that people tend to fix their air conditioning in this part of the world, in Nigeria. They tend to fix their air conditioning in the West. People tend to kick up their heating. So it things like heating bills go up. So understanding the people pattern automatically enables you to be able to position yourself to take advantage. Now, you might not understand it, but you see, as we begin to go to the various blocks of patterns, you begin to see that you now begin to see in what aspects are you deficient. Because sometimes it might be that you are trying to give a product to a people whose season of usefulness is actually on the decline. Whose season of usefulness, because every product is not at its peak level in terms of its season of usefulness. For example, at this time, everywhere in the world, everyone is required to wear a face covering, which is what they call a face mask. People are producing different variants of face masks, and they are selling them. So that at this point now, face masks are at their peak season of their usefulness. Possibly in a few months, possibly by next year, it might not be that of a requirement. So if somebody, for example, decides to take all of his money and invest in the production of face masks at a time when there is now a decline in the season of usefulness of that particular face masks, the person will make a loss. So understanding the people pattern, part of understanding people pattern is also understanding what should you be doing at a particular time. How you prevent yourself being in crisis at a certain age in your life is to understand at the age at which you are now, what should you be doing? We are in a country, unfortunately, where we have young people who do not want to go through the learning curve. So they want to begin to earn while they've not learned. Now, you can decide that, I want to now begin to make the big bucks, or you can tell yourself, I want to learn and build capacity to make the big bucks. And in a few moments, you get to a point where you are able to now begin to make as much as you want to make, because you have built capacity over time. So very, 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 very critical. Very, very critical. Understanding the people pattern. First of all, I said what? Identifying a mentor, someone that has done what you need to do. It's just like the case of the story of the boy. You basically put the picture together. If you put the man together, you fix every other thing. You put the man together, you fix the world. You put the man together, you fix the dream. You put the man together, you fix your purpose. You put the man together, you fix the business. So understanding that, look, identifying someone that has done what you want to do, identifying someone that has gone to where you want to go to, and you automatically plug in and simply pattern your life. Word for word, letter for letter, and deliver the same way the person delivered, and you will see the same results. The other thing about understanding patterns is also understanding seasons of behavior. They are, because the people determine outcomes. So their decisions, their behaviors determine automatically what the global outcome will be. So understanding how people respond per time, the people pattern, the people behavior is critical if you're going to see success in certain endeavors. And the third thing I talked about was in terms of the people pattern is identifying what their reactions will be. So that's for the people pattern. Now the second pattern block I want to talk about is what I call the knowledge pattern. Now you see, what is the knowledge pattern? The knowledge pattern is that for everything, if you play computer games, you play the computer game for the first time, you realize that it is really, really difficult the first time you try. So as you go towards the various levels, you see that the difficulty level increases. But what is happening? You notice that when you've played the game the first time, play the game the second time, by the time you're playing the game the third time, you already understand there's a pattern in the game. There's where you need to jump. There's where you need to skip. There's where that, okay, something's going to come out. There's a trap on the left. There's a trap on the right. There's an explosion that's going to take place. You need to duck. You need to jump. You need to sit. You now begin to identify. You can preempt what is going to happen. So when it comes to knowledge, that means that foresight is critical if your response time is going to be in alignment with what you need to do. So it's the same thing in life. There are times when being just having entry-level knowledge is sufficient. There are times when you need expert knowledge. You need to be able to identify, okay, fine, with this particular group of persons, I can work with entry-level knowledge. But with this particular group of persons, I need expert knowledge. And you need to know what are the requirements for expert knowledge. Now remember we talked about building blocks, deconstructing the critical components for you to be able to function in that space. So whether it is cloud computing, whether it is astrophysics, whether it is aeronautic engineering, whether it's solar engineering, whether it's accounting, there is a body of knowledge that you need to deconstruct and be able to identify what do I need to know at this time to create at a certain level. Very, very key. Otherwise you'll be going around in circles, and you have people that are not happy with you, are disappointed in your output because they feel that you are ripping them off of what they are supposed to do. I don't know if you got that, but that's really, really key. So identifying the knowledge pattern. What happens when people what's the knowledge curve? Now, normally in product adoption, there is a curve. So you have, for example, you have the early adopters, you have the early majority, you have the late majority, you have the laggard. So you now see that people don't also accept new things the same way. Also, when you look at change management, there's a stage of storming, there's a stage of forming, and there's a stage of final crystallization. So now, if you don't understand that people are in a stage of storming, basically you've thrown a new concept at them, and then they are trying to grapple with the difference in operation, just like organizations now and individuals are going through a total disruption of their workplaces. Now, so people don't understand what is going on, and they are responding in the same way they've always responded. They are going to, I said this, an app will soon replace some people on their jobs. An app will soon replace some people on their jobs. That means that there's a state of storming. In fact, some organizations have entered into a state of forming. So they have defined the new norm. They have defined the new norm, and someone I follow talks about being able to function in a time of multiple complexities. Being able to function in a time of multiple complexities. So organizations right now are in a state of storming. What is storming? The way they do things has been totally disrupted, and they are trying to find new ways in which they are going to be delivering value, in which they are going to be delivering their services, and which they are going to be doing their work. Now, an employee or somebody within that organization that does not understand that this is what is going on and continues with the same thing he or she has been doing will soon find themselves out of this. So this is what we talk about, the knowledge pattern. Understanding what phase is the organization in. What do I require? What am I required to know at this time? What should I have in my rucksack? What should I be able to demonstrate expertise in doing? Listen, it is not hocus pocus. It is not guesswork. If you don't know it, pay the price, burn the midnight candle, understand what you need to do. Stop second guessing are things in which you need to be an expert in. If you are in a chosen field, you need to understand the jargons that are spoken in that particular field. Certain terminologies, people cannot be having conversations with you and they have to now break it down and go back to the rudiments because they expect that by now you should be on top of your game and understand what is being said. Understand what's being said. So that's the knowledge pattern. Then fine, we're going to also now look at we looked at the knowledge pattern. We looked at the people pattern. Let's now talk about the pattern of geography. The pattern of geography. Now, in certain parts, I already mentioned that briefly when I talked about the West having winter, autumn, summer, and spring, and then over in this part of the world where we have basically two major seasons, which is basically rainy season and dry season, and how do these things affect it? And I'm going to explain that to you. Now, you see. It looks like it is simple, but you also need to understand it. Now, I will move from the season and I'll go to certain other things. Now, when we talk about geography, now certain places have certain rituals, have certain traditions that automatically create certain things. So, if you said you cannot sell umbrellas in dry season in Nigeria, for example, if you're selling umbrellas in dry season, say okay, for some people that want to buy, so if I want to sell umbrellas in dry season, I will not sell umbrellas in dry season in the south. I will sell umbrellas in dry season in the north. Why? Because temperatures in the north are in upwards of 44, 45, 46 degrees centigrade, which means that people don't only cover themselves from rainfall, they cover themselves from they use the umbrellas to shade themselves. So you might make some sales for umbrellas in the dry season, but also understand that people can brave the sun, but you cannot brave the rain. So the man that's selling umbrellas in dry season and the one that's selling umbrellas in rain season are operating two different things. But you see, understanding the geographical pattern is critical in making your decisions. Now, also understand as a function of whether now the time and the season in the year affects what organizations and what people do. So what people do at the end of the year and what people do at the beginning of the year are two completely different things. What people do mid-year is a completely different thing. So you cannot just function in isolation. You need to understand the geographical pattern. Now while I'm on the subject of geography, let me talk about two components of time, which we talk about chronos and we talk about kairos. Now for chronos is just the passing of time. So that's where you get the word chronological from. So just the basic passing of time. So time is passing, but there's now kairos, which is what? Season in time. Season in time. Now why is this important? Because your behavior in chronos and your behavior in kairos are two completely different things. If you do not take kairos is an opportunity. If you do not plug in at that time, the opportunity passes. There is a time frame for which you need to lock on that opportunity. Failure to do that automatically means that you have lost out on that opportunity. So behaviors during a chronos season and behaviors during a kairos season are two completely different things. You watch football, you play football, you know that the way the players ought to play at extra time, depending on what side of the score sheet they are on, and the way they play when the game just started are two different things. You need to understand that these are two different things. You need to understand how you plug yourself in. You need to understand the geographical pattern. The geographical pattern, like we've entered a season where one of the things that you need to be able to study is to study how do I function during disruptions, whether it is disruptions as a function of pandemic, disruptions as a function of crisis, disruption as a function of unrest. But you need to understand, since we have seen this happen and there's a tendency that this might not be the last, how do I function? How do I fireproof my business? How do I fireproof my income? How do I fireproof my life and my family's life, during such seasons? So you need to begin to deliberately start strategizing and build capacity for how you will respond in such seasons. So that talks about geography. Now, some setting paths based on frameworks that are already in existence. That's why those of us on this side sometimes want to run away, want to travel abroad, things like that. Because why? There are certain frameworks that are already in place, which if you stay in such a location, you can benefit from. If you stay on this part, you might not be able to benefit from them. But understanding that different geographies have different patterns of operation. Sometimes you now see the people's culture superimposed on those behaviors, and it is key, how you respond. Because I heard the story of a man that was sent to a particular location to go and sell shoes. He gets there and then nobody was selling shoes. He goes back to his company and he tells them that nobody's selling. There's no market here. Nobody will buy shoes. They send another salesman there. The man sees that there's nobody wearing shoes here. Means that there's a whole market of people that want to wear shoes. And he started on the process of trying to get them to understand that wearing shoes is the way to go. Wearing shoes is the way to go. So that is another critical pattern. Now the fourth pattern I'm going to talk about, which is going to be the last I'm going to address today, is the resource pattern. The resource pattern. Now, a lot of times people are struggling because they don't understand resource flow. I've just talked about how, for example, a knowledge pattern affects resource flow. I've talked about how a geographical pattern affects resource flow. I've talked about how a people pattern affects resource flow. So if people are in a mood of celebration, for example, like, one of the things I know for a fact is that there was an increasing obsession with being healthy and being well. So we saw wellness practitioners make more money than medical practitioners. What do I mean? People that were into fitness, because there was this time we entered a season where women wanted to be fit, women wanted to have the curves, women wanted to look sexy, things like that. So all of a sudden there was now serious demand for people that were into fitness, and we saw wellness. People now started talking about supplements, vitamin supplements. People started talking about, because we're seeing an increase in certain kinds of diseases and in certain kinds of diseases, and they said that prevention is better than what cure. It's better that you don't even have the ailment than you're trying to cure the ailment. So when we talk about resources, we see how all these other patterns, whether it's the geographic pattern, whether it's the people pattern, whether it's the knowledge pattern, affects the resource pattern. But you can always plug in these various patterns and identify the pattern in resource flow. Identify the pattern. Where is money going? I saw a publication by Financial Times where they looked at the 100 companies that made profit during the pandemic. 100 companies that made profit during the pandemic. So we saw in the top 10, we saw companies like Amazon, we saw companies like Microsoft, we saw companies like Tencent, we saw something like Nvidia, we saw companies like Alphabet, and I started looking at what are the things that these companies are into. Some of them are into online shopping, some of them are into connectivity, some of them are into cloud computing, some of them are into gaming, a number of things. But that now began to point to me at where, when because people were locked in, for example, companies like Zoom you will have seen someone that Zoom made the cut, Netflix made the cut, because why? As long as people were locked in, they were in a season of, they were self-isolating, so to speak, they needed to stay entertained. So we saw an increase in the need or in the crave for entertainment, and that now funded. So we saw a different direction in which resource flowed. Now, another thing that you see when you talk about the resource pattern is you also need to understand that I had someone I respect very talk about this, and he said well, for example, there are people that they are commodities, they are necessities, they are accessories, and then they are exclusives. So remember I said commodities, necessities, accessories, and then exclusive. What does that mean? These are different categories of products. So you notice that in a pandemic or in a crisis, for example, the bulk of people were buying basically commodities and necessities, which were things like clothing, food, and stuff like that. Nobody was spending money on certain kinds of accessories. Like for example, nobody was buying a gold-plated wristwatch, but there were some people that were buying it. So if you were able to identify a people pattern in that, you were able to identify where the resource flow was going to. One of the things I said, for example, was that practical case in point, if you're in Nigeria and in most parts of the world, there was requirements for government officials and news people to do daily briefings on the state of things as far as the pandemic was concerned. Now, question: those people had to dress up, those people had to make up, those people had to commute to where they were going to, those people had to. So now, some of those people, despite the fact that it was a season of pandemic where people were basically stuck on buying commodities and necessities, some of them were still buying accessories because they needed to look good for the camera. So some people still bought new suits because they need to make presentations, they need to make presentations, and they need to make a statement. So people still had to do, an exotic haircut. We saw certain artists function from their homes. While some of them said, this is my lockdown look, some of them still brought their A game in, despite the fact that they were in their homes. So understanding that there is a resource pattern and being able to identify it and know, can I plug in at any point? And you're sure that you'll be able to embark on a system of advantage. I don't know if I brought value to you today, but quick recap: 4 things. So we talked about what? The resource pattern, we talked about the geography pattern, we talked about the people pattern, we talked about the knowledge pattern. I have not scratched this. I want you to give it some thought. I want you to try and build around it, but understand that, look, you cannot grow in isolation. Growth has to be done symmetrically. You have to put one block upon the other. The Bible says line upon line, precept upon precept. You have to be able to put one thing upon the other. But listen, understand this. Just like you see, the world is in cycles. So the sun has a cycle, the moon has a cycle, the earth has a cycle, the seasons have a cycle. The world, the operations of man, they are not as chaotic as they seem. There is a pattern to them. If you are able to identify the pattern, you are able to now begin to operate with a system of advantage. I'll come again. Thank you for joining me. This, like I said earlier on, follow me on my handles on Facebook, on Instagram. If this was some value to you, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and then as we continue to talk about this and bring you inspiring and mind-changing content, you're able to move your life forward. Once again, I'm Orezi, the Growth Catalyst. Have a good one. Think on these things, act on them, do what needs to be done. God bless you.